My head is killing me. You didn't go it live, right? Because it doesn't show me it.
There's going to be a delay, but no, we're live.
Okay.
So hello, everybody. Welcome to the book club for July 26th, 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and with me today is Healthy Love.
Hi, everyone.
And we are going to be discussing the book, The Intimacy Factor by Mellody. And before we get into it, let me just mention what book we're doing next month. I kind of rearranged some things here last minute. Healthy Love, I didn't tell you this. We talked a little bit about it in the group last night. Anyways, so the book that we're going to read next month is called DBT Made Simple.
Deep. Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. We had somebody in the group mention that she was curious about DBT and wanted to discuss it. And I'd said that I would look around. So I was able to find this book on Amazon, and it sounds really cool. It sounds like a great book. So I'll be curious to see. And I hope that some people that have gone through, DBT will be able to chime in and kind of give us their feedback on it.
Great. Yeah. I actually listening to cognitive behavioral therapy, the great courses about that. And I'll be interested to see the differences.
Yes, for sure.
Cool.
For sure. Kelly Hansen asks, is that deep meditation therapy? Okay.
I like that.
Yeah, great question. It actually, DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's like a mindfulness-based therapy. It's a common therapy used for people that are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or really any type of like mood dysregulation. I'm a big fan. I think it should be taught starting in kindergarten. I think everybody can benefit from it. It's so there's in this book that I looked at, it looks like there's some exercises in there. There's it talks about what the therapy is and how we can apply it in our own lives. And so it sounds like, I think there's a lot we can get out of it for those of us that have been through trauma and helping process trauma and emotional regulation. So yeah. So I'll have that link down below in the description here after book club. And I got lots of people hopping on. Sam, welcome. Hazel, Mo, Tanitria, hello. It's been a while. Blue Moon, Super Nin, Kamami Popcorn, hello. I can't believe you're here. My goodness, that's 2 late nights for you in a row.
From Australia?
Kamami, I believe, is from France.
Oh, and we have someone from Australia too, I think.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, I guess we'll jump into it. I did finish my notes. Let me see if it'll let me post the link in the group chat. YouTube is funny about links. Oh, yeah. It will. Okay, cool. So there is the link in the chat if you want to follow along with my notes. I have 8 takeaways, and then Healthy Love is just going to chime in. It's so funny. We were talking about this book before we went live, and I think we both have some very different takeaways. So I think it'll be good because.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we mainly agree. It's just that it's probably the difference is I look at what I am missing in my boundaries, and you probably were looking for what do you need to work inside of your boundaries.
Totally.
Yes, I think that's the difference only.
That's what's so fun for me with doing book club and having multiple people kind of chime in is, whenever we read a book, we're reading it from where we are at that place in our life. Yeah. And it's the most wild thing, because if you go back, if you in 6 months or in 6 years, you reread that book, you're going to get totally different information out of it. And your impression of the book overall is going to radically change. So
Can I just quickly say this thing? I
Yeah.
wonder if we could have one more person join in the future. That would be so much fun to have 3 people.
I would love that.
It
I
would
would
be
love.
great if someone wanted to join us. And the second thing you read, I also, when I read this book, like for me, I was looking at it a lot through being a mom. And I think I mentioned it before in many discussions. Like it just, I always look for how to be a better mom. And, you know, since I'm raising a child with the crazy person, you know, co-parent. So this book is actually really helpful in raising a child too. You can learn a lot. So
That's a very valid point. And then that's one of the things in here that I really did like, where she talks about, and that's one of the points I have in my notes, is about kind of
see?
the main goal of a parent, is basically to teach a child value, that they have value and that they have self-worth. And she goes into different ways that we can do that with far as like boundaries and all that. So
yeah, I love it. Yeah.
okay, so I'll just hop in. So the first takeaway, which is just what you were saying before we went live, Healthy Love, is when we are living in our authenticity, we are in alignment with ourselves and tuned into higher power energy. And she says the spiritual path isn't about goodness, it's about walking in our truth.
Yeah.
And when we move into a lie, we move off of the path. When we tell ourselves and others the truth instead of lies, we are automatically tuning into higher power energy. It's only in our alignment with ourselves that we can become a fully actualized human being. And
I getting thrilled just, you know,
I know. I just love that. I think she just nailed it. I couldn't agree more with that. And,
yeah.
and this is something that we've talked about before in the different live streams about walking. We were actually just last night, I want to say it was Truth Seeker had made the comment about, you know, walking in our truth, walking in our authenticity.
Yeah.
And that is, you are truly in alignment. And the more we get used to doing that, and the more we become okay with our thoughts and feelings and wants and needs and walking in our truth, the more uncomfortable lying or inauthenticity of any kind, it becomes almost unbearable. And we see how unnecessary it is too. Like once we have healthy boundaries and we're able to assert ourselves and distance from problematic people, then there's no need for this dysfunctional way of being, you know?
Yeah, and it's like the whole recovery and healing, it's all about finding what's true for you. What do you want? What do you like? What makes you happy? What is true for you, what is authentic for you, how close you want people, how far you, like all of that, right? It's all about you, what's really true for you. But I have to just say this one thing. I was reading introduction, I was sitting on the beach and looking at the sunset, so it was like double magical for me.
I love it.
That was great. Yeah, I love that.
Yes, let's see. Let me move on to point number 2.
Yeah.
Let's see. And again, if you're just hopping on, we are discussing the book, The Intimacy Factor by Mellody. And I'll have the link to my notes is in the chat, but it'll also be down in the description below after the video airs.
Yeah. Now let me just say this one thing, because I think we talked about it, me and you, that we picked this book to really focus on the on the healing process, on us having healthy life. So this whatever we are talking here about, it doesn't really apply to anything inside of you know, relationship with abuser, and we're not gonna analyze abusers, analyze manipulators over here. We're really focusing on I would say the healthy side of boundaries, the healthy side on relationships. Like let's just empower each other with this book. That's what we want to do.
That's a really great point. And, you know, that's something that I know you and I have both brought up before about, you know, trying to set boundaries and have clear, healthy communication with an abusive person is not only an exercise in frustration, it can really put a person in serious danger.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah. And she touches on that a little bit in the book. And she says, you know, basically people that have no boundaries, as soon as you start setting boundaries, they feel very oppressed and they lash out. And that's completely true because they're so used to just everything is a free for all for them. And so I thought, yes, that's a very valid point.
And I also feel like another thing, like when you are listening to this discussion, like what I would suggest would probably be, I don't know, great takeaway from maybe this book club is just like look for how you can be really at peace with with your worth as you as a human being, just the way you are created and just the way you were born. Just try to listen and find your own truth and get at peace with that you are worthy just the way you are. You are worthy and you're wonderful. And
yeah,
I guess that's the point of this book, and it's a great book.
it's a great book. And if you're not familiar with Pia Mellody's work, I mean, I just can't recommend it enough. She's fantastic.
I'm in love with her. She's the person that actually inspired me to create boundaries, because before, boundaries sounded to me like some I almost want to say like psychological bubble, like like too much. And when she, in one of her videos on the YouTube, I heard that setting boundaries is a spiritual practice. That really inspired me. Like really awaken in and the whole following my own truth, looking for my own truth, that really made it more beautiful for me, because before, boundaries was like set of strict rules I have to follow and constrain myself and others, and then it becomes a spiritual practice, which is so much more fun.
Yes, I agree. And I think here's the thing too with boundaries is it can be overwhelming at first to think about setting them and what all is involved. But the reality is, and she goes, and we'll go into this here in a little bit, is that we already have boundaries and we've already been exercising those boundaries. We just haven't been doing it consciously.
Yes.
And so, okay. So let me jump into point number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 2, healthy boundaries are a requirement for healthy intimacy and healthy relationships. And I love what she says here. She says, boundaries are the psychological points of passage through which, on the one hand, we express the truth of ourselves, and on the other, the information sent our way flows to us when we are in a relationship. When our boundaries are functioning properly, what we express about ourselves respectfully communicates the truth of our emotions and ideas, and what we let into our hearts and minds is relevant only to the emotions and ideas we hold true about ourselves. So let me unpack that a little bit. So there's boundaries are a two-way street. It's what we're sending out into the world and then what we're taking in from the world. And so it's based on respect. And so when we do value ourselves and we do respect ourselves, the communication, our communication with the outer world is not wrapped up in trying to create like a power over type relationship with others. It's based on sort of like that I'm okay, you're okay type mindset. And perhaps more importantly, or something that I think most of us have struggled with, is the information that we're receiving in from others. If we have a good sense of self-worth and self-value, we're able to either accept or not accept what's being told to us. So for example, if someone calls us a bunch of names, or they're treating us they're for being very verbally and emotionally abusive, we don't have to accept that. And we can see this is all of everything that they're saying. That's a reflection of them. That's not a reflection of us. Mm-hmm. And we'll kind of go into that a little bit more, but I love that she made that point of boundaries are a two-way street with how we interact with others and how we allow others to interact with us. Maybe even a three-way street, because it's how we interact with others, how others interact with us, and then how we interact with ourselves. Right?
No, that's yeah, I get that. Yeah, because we're gonna talk about this later, I guess, that the whole like child inside of us, how we interact with that. Yeah, that's how that's a two-way street.
Let's see. Healthy boundaries create appropriate vulnerability, letting others in, and self-expression, letting ourselves out. Healthy intimacy requires healthy boundaries. And for that to happen, we adjust our communicative energies in the interest of our partner's comfort, and that we require our partner to adjust his or her communication in the interest of ours. That's that sense of mutuality that we're always talking about, of kind of being team oriented and solutions oriented. And that's what compromise looks like in a relationship. So it's not a one-way street. It's not us staying silent. And she says this give and take in the interest of intimacy and comfort requires commitment, loyalty, and cooperation.
Yeah, I love how she created the whole picture of what relationship is about, that you are sharing your mind, your body, your emotions, your heart with another human being, and they sharing theirs, and it's all about loving and respecting each other and being loyal to each other, and finding that common ground, basically, that you're not speaking out at someone. Or are we gonna talk about later about this, the up and down, or can I say it now?
Go for it now. Yeah.
Okay. So I love how she said that it's not just when you are speaking from the one up position at someone that is damaging, but also, like, I think we all, like, as victims and survivors, we are the ones why we usually the one on the one down. Like we often question our value so much more than the other person. And the way she said it is that if you are here, if you're as a victim speaking from the one down, so you feel worse than the other person, you are also robbing yourself and this other person from the intimacy in a relationship. So the whole point is to be like, even if you have this problem, acknowledge it and try to find a common ground with your partner to have a conversation. So then you're not talking to the person in order to manipulate, or and if you are not on the same ground, that's what's going to happen. But you simply share your truth with love and respect, and just to share it so they know you're true, and then they get to see it, and they can share their truth about what's happening in that moment. And that's what makes you two equal partners. And yeah, abusers not capable of doing that. So this is really not for anything inside of abusive relationship, guys.
Right. I think it's after the fact.
After the fact, yeah.
Right.
This is great for if you are looking to date right now and you want to see how to create a good communication in your next relationship.
Yes.
This is a great freaking book to read right now.
Or with friends, or, she touches on what you were saying, the one up or one down position. And she said, really, true healing, true intimacy, true connection comes from having a relationship of equals. And she also mentions this with the relationship between therapist and client. And I agree completely with this. I see this a lot, and I find it really troublesome when people will say, well, my therapist says I should do X, Y, and Z, and that's controlling behavior.
Yeah.
And it's important, because what if your therapist decides to retire or gets hit by a bus? Then what are you going to do? So, like, you need to be able to think for yourself and to make your own decisions, and not be able to be grounded enough in yourself that your wants and your needs and your thoughts and your feelings. It can be great to listen to others and take their input, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to make those decisions, because you're the only one that has to live with the consequences.
Yeah.
So
definitely. And still, like, going back to the main point is you can only do what is true for you. So someone else's true does not need to be your true. And I think too often we try to take someone else's true and fit it into our life, and we really hurting ourselves. We don't know it. We don't know we're hurting ourselves, but we do, because we think like they know better, and yeah, that's, I think as victim a lot, we like, you said this yesterday in a live stream when you were starting to date someone, and you know how you ignored your gut feeling because you were taking someone else's truth and trying to make it as your own. But if you listen to your own truth, you would avoid lots of pain in your life that time.
I didn't, yes. And I think that's one of those major red flags within us that flies under the radar, because most people, I think a lot of us are like, well, I don't want to be overreactive. I don't want to be judgmental. I don't want to miss out on a good person. And so what do? We start looking to others for validation and confirmation of our decisions. And we may or may not get that. And it's a continually turning to others to tell us what they think about something is a sign that we're not grounded in ourselves, and that we really need to work on trusting ourselves and trusting our judgment.
Yep.
And it takes time and it takes practice, but I guarantee you, the cool thing is that inner self doesn't ever leave you. And it might feel like you're like, I just really don't know. I don't know what to do. You do know. You really do. You just have to calm yourself down and get settled enough. And if it requires journaling things out and kind of backing up a few steps, getting in tune with that inner voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's see here. Alcuda Babe brought up a great point that we touched on this a little bit last night in the live stream. And she says, setting boundaries takes practice. And she says, I find that I never picked up on an issue at the time, and I feel upset about that for a while. But if I can pick up on it later, I think is what she's saying, I feel better as I'm also communicating my needs. So
that's great.
We talked a little bit, let me just say this real quick. We talked a little bit last night about there's this 3 levels of awareness of a problem. And the first one is when we're waking up to this, we see the problem after the fact, and it feels like a hit and run accident. Things feel off for a while. We're uncomfortable, we're angry, we're resentful, but we don't really know why. And then maybe things get so bad that we end up quitting the job or leaving the friendship or the relationship. And then we realize, oh, we were manipulated, or, oh, we were abused. The second wave, when we start waking up to it, is we start identifying this kind of stuff as it's happening. And then the third wave is we can see, not only can we see it coming before it's happening, we're seeing all of the small little red flags early on, but we're also able to prepare ourselves for it. So we know, okay, this person's manipulative, so we can either just steer clear of them, or we can kind of develop some coping strategies in order to deal with it up front ahead of time. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Healthy?
No, I was just saying that it is a process, like everything else is like, and one of the things she said in the book about, parenting, that it's okay to not to know everything from the very beginning. Like she said it in some place that, it's fine to change your mind. Like, I don't know, there is this culture, sometimes people say that once you make up your mind about something, you should just get stuck with it. That's such a BS in my world right now. I used to be like that. Like once you make up your mind about something, then you should just, stick to it, like people say it.
Okay.
And I think that's not true, because that stops you from learning, No, you should keep an open mind. So with boundaries, it's the same. Like you can have a very rigid boundary about something, and then you learn with the time that it may be too rigid, maybe it robs you from intimacy and connection with other people, and you wanna change it, and you can hire change your boundaries, like in listening or talking with people, take them to different level. It's really a process, but not just like error and figuring out, but it's a process of discovering what's really true for you, because you spent a life, one in abuse, when you were not allowed to express your truth. Like you weren't in touch with who you really are, what you really want, and you're emotionally dysregulated, so you don't freaking know what's true for you, and like what do you want. So that will be a process for you to discover that, and then learning, because you didn't have all those social I have a terrible headache, interactions So, the more interactions you have, the more you're figuring stuff. So you're really learning it. And it's just a shame that we have to learn it as an adult, because, in the perfect world, our parents will teach us that. It would be great. So.
And then we have a comment here from Mo who asks, so why do we bounce from lower to higher position and feeling bad about talking arrogantly if someone hurts us, and we get defensive and reply back in a defensive, snobbish way?
Perfect question. I love that question. It's. Do you want to answer it, or you want me to try?
Go for it.
So it's because we are wounded in our childhood. We are, each of us experience some sort of trauma. It can be neglect. It can be active abuse. There are two different sides of it. Overt abuse, basically, from our parents, and that gets us to either, as a child, our survival and our life is at stake for us. So we try to figure out how to deal with it. So we either figure out how to be better than what's, other people, or if our parents are actually abusive us in an active way, like they attack our worth as a child, we actually start feeling worthless. So then I don't know if I want to take all the details, but I guess I do. So this creates inside of you a wounded child and an adopted wounded child. And I think it really has a lot to do with the age when, the trauma happens to you originally. But in the future, how it manifests itself is that if you are in a situation that will remind you of that original hurt, you will react how, you will not react to it as an adult. Like, let's say I'm 39, gosh, I'm 39 years old. 38. Oh my gosh, I got myself older. I'm 38 years old. But sometimes people made me feel worthless, and I'm not reacting to it as a 38-year-old. I'm reacting to it like a freaking 6-year-old, because that's when I got hurt. And I'm reacting from the, one down position. Now, when something happens when we're older, like like 8 or something older, usually you are one up. So you are like, I'm reacting in an arrogant way. I'm like angry and stuff like that. So that's why you can see the changes. Want to add to it? Because we all go from up and down. Like we all do that, right?
Well, and I think it's very common too for people when we feel attacked. It's very common for our default reaction to attack back, and that's
you feel attacked because it gets that original wound inside of you,
well,
right?
and even if it's not an original wound.
You don't think so? Okay.
No, I think if somebody just says something snarky and just kind of T-bones you with an insult, like.
Okay, I don't have people like this in my life, but I guess it's
no, I don't. Well, I guess I do because I'm on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So like,
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
If people kind of come at me sideways with comments, it's normal when a person gets attacked that we want to attack back, and it can take a lot of self-control to take a deep breath, especially if you don't see it coming, to take a deep breath and take a step back. But that kind of escalation is what you're talking about, Mo. And like Healthy Love was saying, that can kind of happen. It can happen we can have this original wounding that happens. So, for example, let's say if a person grows up feeling less than, let's say they don't have a lot of money and they get teased as a child about the clothes they wear. Okay. And they get bullied. And as an adult, maybe they're overcompensating now. They're making a lot of money. They always make sure that they have the most expensive everything clothes wise. And if somebody makes fun of them again, it just kicks out the chair from underneath them, and they go on the attack. So it might even be a friend that's kind of just razzing you about, oh, maybe you're wearing like the latest trendy sneakers, right? And your friend is like, oh man, those look like girl shoes.
How
Or they're and they don't even really mean to, they're just good naturedly teasing you, but it's walking that line. But for somebody that might have gotten bullied for their clothes,
Yeah.
they might become really reactive and lash out. And then everybody in the room, including that person, is like, what on earth just happened?
Yep.
And that's really common. She goes in this book, and we're not going to cover it tonight because it would just be really difficult to cover. But in this book, there's tons of examples of different ways that people become reactive, and her thoughts on why, and she talks about identifying different, which I actually liked this exercise. She said to go back through and think of some key traumatic moments in your life. So maybe it was a specific event. So she talks about her own life, and this kind of, actually, I won't go into detail because it will be triggering to people, but
Yes.
So let's say maybe you were bullied at the age so let's say maybe you were abandoned by your parents at the age of 3. Okay. And then you moved to a new town at the age of 5, and that was traumatic for you. And then maybe at the age of 7, you were bullied. And then maybe at the age of 13, you were made fun of because you either didn't hit puberty or you hit puberty really young. And then sort of write down all of these different key moments in your life. Maybe you got into an abusive, your father was abusive, or in just key moments. So, the time that maybe your father lashed out and called you some names and you were approximately 15. And then to go back through, and then it's interesting because then you can see those moments and how many of them are so deeply ingrained that they can really shape our reaction to how we respond to other people now, that kind of maybe even inadvertently hit those same buttons.
Yeah, and Mo was actually asking how to stop that cycle. So that's what you're actually saying right now. Like, once you discover those moments and those people who, like, hurt you in a way that was really meaningful to you and changed something, you made it, you actually let it mean something about you. So it changed your identity for you. Once you identify that, then she's actually working with people. It's called chair work, and we're probably gonna cover it a little bit later, but basically you will address those people in this exercise, and you can actually express to them what was true for you, and give them back the emotion you took on from them that weren't really true for you.
Yes.
And it probably sounds really cryptic right now because
You know what? Let's get into that, because I think it addresses most questions. So chair work is also a pretty big component of Gestaltist therapy. And so basically you would have a chair. And so let's say, for example, you had one of the people that deeply wounded you was your father, who had called you a bunch of names when you were 14. Okay. So you would visualize, you would really get yourself into a place where you can visualize him being in the chair. And then you would talk to him as if he was in the chair and let him know, you know what, what you did to me when I was 14, those names that you called me, that was unacceptable. That was outrageous and inappropriate and cruel and hurtful. And I didn't deserve that. That wasn't fair. I am none of those things that you called me. And you set that chair, Dad, straight. And you're getting in tune with all of those emotions. And you're just saying, like, that was so not okay. That was not okay with me. And when I was 14, I didn't have the words or the voice or the authority or the ability to stand up for myself. But
and I took off all the shame that you gave me, and that shame is not mine to carry through my whole life right now. But I think it's important to say, if you had a traumatic experience, do not do the chair work at home alone, please, because it may not be such a great idea.
I don't know if I think if you have a therapist that you trust, this can be good.
I wouldn't do it alone, just because if you get
I prefer to do it alone.
Yeah, but if you had, let's say you would work about, and I don't want to trigger anyone, but something very traumatic, and if you do it alone, you may experience emotions that are really strong for you, and you can basically traumatize yourself. So maybe don't do it alone on something hard. If you want to do it on something easier first and try how you feel about it, then maybe that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So,
that sounds good.
Let's just do it to be healthy.
Yeah.
And healthier each day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so this was a point.
That was a further point. I think we should go back to the.
Well, here's this point that I wanted to make that we'd been discussing for a while. I think Bonnie was the one that had brought it up a few times. It said, what we know. Okay, so talking about bound. Actually, before I get into that, I wanted to address Alcuda Babe had a great comment that was related, and she said, this was my concern, and this is what I was just talking about with boundaries. How I was like, well, no, sometimes when you feel wounded, it's not always because of stuff in your past. Like sometimes people really are just being jerks, right?
Yes.
And it's a legitimate thing to just be like, this person's being a jerk. And so she was saying, I think my family are attacking me, but I'm told I can't take their jokes. They're also so sarcastic, and I find that I react to that because it reminds me of getting bullied in school. Here's the thing. Oh, and she says, I can't take sarcastic remarks on my looks or my weight because to me, I find that they are making it personal. Well, and here's the thing is with jokes, it's okay to not find certain things funny or to be sensitive about things. It doesn't mean that you have this issue. It means that it's not funny to you. I don't think a lot of people would find it funny to be teased about their appearance. And the line with that is when it becomes bullying, is if you assert yourself and you're like, like, I know you guys, you think you're just playing around, but it's not funny to me. Like, please, like, no more jokes, no more sarcasm about my appearance or my weight. Like, it's not cool. If they keep on, then they're not respecting your boundaries and they are being jerks.
Sarcasm is a form of abuse, for God's sake.
And everybody has a different dynamic, right? So like some people, you might have that with your best friend, you guys might be sarcastic and joke around in certain ways. And you might not be able to have that dynamic with your boss or with coworkers or with family members. And so it's okay for that boundary to be ever shifting as long as you're expressing yourself.
You can be flexible, but if it's hurtful for you, it's hurtful for you, and you shouldn't.
End of story. I mean,
okay, sarcasm is very brutal. She actually touches on that later on. I just want to read that. The Greek etymological root of the word is sarkasmos, from sarkazine, to bite the lips in rage, from sark flesh. So basically, it's about hurting you. It's like it's saying things that hurt you almost in a physical way, something that will bite you. That's being abusive.
It's biting humor, and it's not. You really have to proceed with caution, and that's the kind of humor. You like, and I've been on both sides of that. I've been the one where I've thought I was being funnier than I was, and I really hurt some people's feelings. But the thing is, though, like a normal person that's team oriented, if that happens, then they're like, oh my, you feel terrible. You're like, oh my gosh, I was just razzing you. Like, I totally did not mean to hurt your feelings at all. I'm sorry. And then it never happens again. But if a person keeps on, then that's just not cool.
No, I totally get it, because I've done it too. And I'm very unfiltered, and I say things that aren't very sensitive, and I have to be responsible for it and apologize.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like we all make mistakes. So if people, people listen to these live streams and they watch these videos and they start freaking out and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing some of this stuff in myself. And it's like, well, because you're human, it's more about what you're identifying as problematic and how you're going about addressing it.
Yep.
So just like Mo was saying, he's like, man, I am totally guilty of this. Like I have way overreacted and I've become defensive, and I need some help diffusing this stuff, and I'm trying to work through it, and I don't know what to do. Like that's a very human, like raw, honest statement. And it shows a tremendous amount of insight and accountability into his behavior.
Yeah.
It's not easy for people to admit, like, wow, yeah, I really acted out of line and I need to figure out what's going on so I can stop it. So.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so then to add to that, so here was this comment. This was something that Bonnie was talking about the other day. She said, we're talking about the concept of perception, and like basically well, I guess we're talking about that now. How can you tell if they're trying to be fun, if it's them or if it's you, if they're trying to be funny and I don't have a good sense of humor, or if they're really being abusive? And she says, what we know about the truth is limited to what our perception of it is at any moment. Telling the truth is our best guess about what's going on with our thoughts and emotions. Despite the subjectivity of our perceptions of what truth is, if we do not act on the basis of what we genuinely believe it to be, our attempts at intimacy will fail. So let me unpack that a little bit. So basically, if our perception of truth is that, so if I'm El Kuda Babe, right, and my family's teasing me about my weight and my appearance, if my perception of truth is that I'm feeling bullied and that it's not funny and it's hurtful to me, that is my perception of truth. I don't share the same truth as the people that are doing it. In order for me to be authentic, I need to be able to act on the basis of my perception of that truth in an appropriate and assertive way. And so that's part of the setting this boundary of then saying to them, hey, you know what? Like, I know you guys keep saying that you're just joking and stuff, but it's not, it's feeling like bullying and it's really hurting my feelings. And I would really appreciate it if you would stop.
Yeah, and I love how she says later exactly how to do it in a way that's really responsible. She actually gives instruction in the book when you can say, I think I love it because it's like you really are responsible and you're taking like you're sharing your experience of what's happening for you. So like when I walk into the room and I saw you as sitting by the table and you guys said this and this to me, what I made, like you do not say what you made me feel, how you made me feel, or what it made me feel. You don't say those words because then you kind of like, I think it's two things. You're giving away your responsibility, like you're not responsible for what your own experience, but you're also like giving away your power, so don't do that. You can say what I made it mean about me, what I made it feel, what I make myself feel about it is that I'm worthless or whatever. And you can share that experience. Like, don't share it with abuser, of course, because they know you hurting, right? Sharing your experience with abuser won't make a difference. But you can share that with a person that you trust loves for you, and you can then I love how she says you can say your preference. I would prefer if you would speak to me in this way, because in this way you do not try to control and manipulate the other person and change how they are towards you. Like, they have a right to be however they are, and you know what, they can choose to be sarcastic. It's their choice, but you have a right to communicate to them that this is not working for you, it's hurtful. You can express what are you prefer, like what kind of a communication would be a positive for you, right? And then they have a right to choose whatever they want to choose, but you stand your ground and you hold on to your truth. And I think that gives you so much more power and more options in your life. Basically, it's a kind of different dialogue than saying you made me feel this, it's completely different. You should try.
It's completely owning our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. And that's an interesting shift when we start to go that way. So what Healthy Love is saying is we're replacing all of those you statements, all of the blame. you did this, you made me feel this. And,
Yeah.
and talking about it in terms of our perceptions of things. Like, I really had my feelings hurt when,
Yeah.
when you were teasing me about my weight. So you're sticking to the facts. When you were joking about my weight, I really had my feelings hurt. I was feeling like I was being bullied, and I just really don't appreciate it. And I would much rather you not talk about my weight,
Yeah.
and be clear about, like, this is just going to be a topic that's off of limits to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so point number 3.
Yay.
Okay, so she says all trauma, this is what you're talking about, all trauma results from either disempowering abuse or falsely empowering abuse. And she says we become out of alignment in a wide variety of ways, but for many people, this starts with childhood trauma. The abusive parent either shames the child into silence as a way of diminishing his or her external stress, thereby disempowering the child, or assigns the child roles in which the child performs assignments for which the parent should be responsible, thus falsely empowering the child.
I mean, I read this chapter as a mother, and I have to tell you, I was like really judging my mothering skills and lack of maturity in different situations, because I clearly remember I was actually falsely empowering my daughter to be much more mature, because I thought that would actually help her. So, of course, I don't think I'm the only parent doing that, but I don't think most of us are really aware of how I actually realized that it's hurtful. It's really hurtful, because you rob the child of who they are in that moment, and you tell them that they should be more than they are. And like, that's like, I really got how not okay is that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of, like you're saying, a lot of parents do this kind of stuff unintentionally. And
Yeah.
or, if you've got a parent who's depressed or, lonely or sad, and it's real easy, especially with older children, to kind of turn them into a friend. And then there's that blurring of boundaries, where then we're making our adult problems their problems, and they don't have the power or the ability, and then they feel kind of obligated to take care of us, and it's just this big blurring of boundaries. And the book The Gifted Child, Alice Miller is the author that she
I want to read it. Yes.
She talks about that, when a child is given adult responsibilities, either implied or directly, giving a 13-year-old, saying, okay, well, you need to watch your siblings, that kind of stuff. Like, they're not the adult, they're not a parent, like, that's not their job. And, or turning a child into a parent, basically. And then the parent becomes the child, or the parent is just co-parenting with their oldest child. And what happens is then and you can see this in kids that have been put in a more adult role, they become an adult child. And so many adults think like, oh, and I have two friends of mine that come to mind that their kids are very much the same way. I remember one gal in particular, well, she's not really a friend anymore. One gal in particular, her daughter, when I first met her, was probably 8. And I remember thinking, her daughter acts like she's 16. She's so mature. And she was the one that would do most of the cooking, would look after the little boy, her brother. I think probably a lot of us can relate to being the adult child in our family, the caretaker.
But it's crazy, because when I took my daughter to therapy for the first time a couple years ago, now I'm thinking, wow, that's not okay. Her therapist actually acknowledged it as something positive, that she's so mature. So it's not only that us parents are unaware of how damaging this is, also health professionals, they still don't get it, that being over mature is not healthy. And like, I think this is why I love Pia work so much, because the whole idea of sticking to what's really true to you in the moment, like that, it makes sense to me right now. I'm like, damn, my daughter is 16. She should be what's true to her in every moment as a 16, you know?
Yeah, that's
It's a 16.
you nailed it. So then you can kind of tell, like, okay, if you're 16, it's
Yeah.
appropriate to act 16. It would be inappropriate to act like she's 10 or 12. And it would be
Yeah.
inappropriate if she was acting like she was 20. Like there's something off. I remember I had another friend of mine who, when I met her, her son was 9 or 10. And I don't know if I'd ever met an age appropriate child before. I think I'd worked with troubled kids my whole life. And I think a lot of my friends up until that point had their own stuff going on. And I remember thinking, being over at her house, and she'd finished reading him a bedtime story. And I just remember thinking, like, how, like, he was just so, I mean, talk about like secure attachment style. Like, I just remember thinking how safe and secure he was. And he was able to be 10 years old. And I just remember thinking, like, how awesome that is for him, you know? And like, that's what it should be. Like, that's what a 10-year-old should act like. And, you know, be into Legos and be cute and not have adult responsibilities and want a bedtime story. And you know what I mean? Like, it just was a good example of a healthy, age appropriate 10-year-old.
I don't think that I don't think none of us we had a childhood that we could be appropriate children.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah, but I think lots of people commenting that they were falsely disempowered by their parents a lot, like shamed and yelled at and told how stupid they are. And I, you know what, the craziest it sounds, I think I got mix of both, and I probably most of us did, because I've been called stupid, and my mom, she had no idea what she was saying. Of course, my mom, she was traumatized by of course I'm explaining my mother here, but she was in a marriage with sociopath, so obviously she wasn't healthy parent to me. But she used to say this thing, and I always thought that was funny. She used to say that I'm stupid, but the way she said it, it was like, oh God, I can't translate it. Basically, the way she said that, I didn't think it's really damaging, but it was. It really was, because I find myself question. Like right now, I'm about to, embark with my art. You Donna, you know more. Dana, you know more about it. But I'm about to have a show, and I lost half of the night yesterday's sleep, because I felt I'm stupid and I don't deserve it, and I'm just stupid. And it was brilliant that we're reading this book, because I was just clearly hearing my mother voice in my head that I'm stupid, you know?
Mm.
So it sticks with us, and we have to do the work. And I think I'm gonna do chair work with my mother, like seriously.
Yeah.
And I have a good relationship with my mom, but I'm literally going to do chair work with my mom and give her back the whole damn stupid feeling, because it's not mine. It's like,
Yeah.
here, dear mommy, you didn't know any better. Guess what? You were stupid when you were doing that to me.
Yeah.
But the worst part about it is that I've said it to my daughter a few times that she's stupid, in the past. And I did apologize for that. And I said, like, I want you to know I said it, but it's not true about you. And I don't know if I can unsay the damage I've done, because, I was abused, my mom was abused, and I was just really, perpetrating
Uh-huh.
the whole abuse pattern. And I decided to stop it. So when I started doing the work, I realized about some of the abusive things I said to my daughter, and it's a hard thing for us to swallow.
Yeah.
It's a very bitter pill.
Yeah, it is. When I was working at the domestic violence shelter, one of the biggest challenges there was, we had a policy. There was no physical punishment, and there was no yelling, no name calling, no put downs. So basically no verbal abuse, no, these kids were, the women were traumatized, their children were traumatized. And then trying to break the cycle. And it's like, I know you're frustrated. I know that you're at the end of your rope and you're exhausted, and your kid is bouncing off the wall because they're traumatized too. But like, we've got to break the cycle in the words
Yeah.
that we choose, and how we handle stuff. And that was a big part of it, was coming up with some alternative ways to do it. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to just say like, okay, this ends now, this ends with me, and I've got to find some different ways to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And especially like if, as victims, we have kids, with the abusers. Like I told you, like I start writing about it, and I think it's gonna be ready for, us to share it soon. But we have to remember, we are the only one healthy parent in this dynamic. We are the one that can show our child how to be healthy. So we have to be responsible and really deal with what's going on with us, to give our child, the created to be, because they have worth. They are perfectly imperfect as a human being,
Yeah.
just the way they are, and it's all right the way they are, and we need to figure out how to show them and, don't rob them from that experience of being who they are.
And along those lines, so let's go on to point number 4 here. She talks about 5 essential attributes of the authentic child that center around inherent worth. And
I
that's,
was crying when I was reading it.
yeah, okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
they are vulnerability, nascent reason, dependence, appropriate immaturity, and exuberant energy. And the self-esteeming parent guides the child to the proper expression and development of each of these attributes through appropriate boundaries to allow for the development of the authentic self. So let's,
We talked about the already a little bit about the appropriate maturity, right?
mhm.
We don't have to touch that one on. Which one was your favorite from here? Like example or?
um, I think they're all good. So I guess I'll start.
Go ahead.
I kind of need to think of some examples for the vulnerability. I guess maybe being overly trusting or inappropriately trusting, or not trusting enough, would fall under the umbrella of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Here's an example. There was a gal, she was a neighbor of mine. She was an alcoholic, and this was 10, 15 years ago, had a little girl who was absolutely darling. And the girl at the time was probably about 3 years old. Both of her parents were alcoholics, big time alcoholics. And I mean, would start drinking the moment they got out of bed. And they always had they hated to drink alone, and they had no shortage of other alcoholics over there all the time. And some of the people over there were really sketchy, creepy people. And but because she didn't want to introduce these other people, I don't know, it was weird. She would introduce them. Everybody was aunt or uncle. Oh, that's Aunt Dana. Oh, that's Uncle Larry. Oh, that's Aunt Susan. And so for the little girl, I remember thinking, and I was pretty young at the time, but I
Yeah.
remember thinking like, this is really inappropriate, because now this little girl has this inappropriate level of closeness, and her guard is totally down against this room full of strangers. And half of these people might have been strangers to her mom like 2 hours ago.
Oh my God, yes.
So like, real skewed ideas about like trust and vulnerability and what's appropriate, and just no boundaries. Oh, if this person's likable and they like to drink, then they're safe around my child, was the mentality. And that was terrifying to me. And I hope to goodness that that little girl is okay. Okay, so the next one is nascent reasoning. So basically the ability to understand and perceive reality in a logical way. And so in the book, she gives the example, same with an alcoholic, of if a child has a parent who's an alcoholic, just as an example, that you've got a parent who's passed out on the floor, or even let's say a person who's passed out on the floor, and the child says, "Oh, is Uncle Larry drunk?" And the parent says, no, 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 he's just sleeping.
Well,
And
he's not your Uncle Larry. He's just a stranger that's sleeping on
right.
the floor and he's drunk. That would
Well,
be the truth.
but but that's a problem because then the child's learning like, okay, well, it's weird because he smells like alcohol. He's got a beer bottle next to his hand. His clothes are disheveled. It looks like he's drunk,
Yeah.
and you're telling me it's gaslighting. Like you're
You know
telling me that
what?
he's not drunk and he's drunk. And
Yeah. Sorry, this
um,
is when I realized that my mother used to do that to me actually. And I was wondering how I was so easy to have my perception altered by my ex-husband. And it's because I was already doubting my perception as a freaking child. And like you said that yesterday that it's gaslighting. And when Pia says here it's immature parenting to do it, I go further to I say it's a freaking psychological abuse.
it is. And I think it's an unintentional form of gaslighting. I think parents do it in a way to try to protect their children.
Yep.
But it's still
Sounds
damaging.
true.
Whenever we're denying somebody, we're altering their perception of reality. It's psychological abuse. And here's some more subtle examples of this. This is from the book, The Verbally Abusive Relationship. She talks about how parents, and I can totally see this, right? Let's say you're in line getting ice cream and you've got a 4-year-old with you, and the ice cream gal asks, what flavor would you like? And your child says strawberry. And as their parent, you're like, no, they're not going to eat strawberry. They're like, oh, honey, you know what? You don't like strawberry. You like vanilla. And the child is thinking, no, no, I think I want to try strawberry. I think I like strawberry. And the parent's like, no, we'll have vanilla. Right. And it's well intended because you're in this long line of people. You're like, there's like a 99% chance my kid's going to have one bite of this, and then they're going to want vanilla, and then they're going to be crying. And, but doing that and not allowing them to like explore and basically prove themselves wrong, it sets them up to not try. And then it also sets them up to doubt, because they might have had strawberry ice cream at a friend's house and loved it.
Yeah.
So, or at school, like we don't know. And so or here's another example: as a child falls and skins their knee, and the parent and the child's like, oh, I'm hurt. And again, as a parent, you're like,
You okay?
you're okay. It doesn't hurt. You'll be fine. And the kid is thinking, no, I'm not okay. This hurts. And the parents, oh no, I kissed it and made it all better. And the kid's like, no, it actually didn't do anything. Like it still really hurts, And so those are some unintentional ways that we gaslight children. And then that kind of stuff continues on. And you can get this stuff at work. You can get it at school. Where people will tell you it's not a problem when it is.
Yeah. It's the worst part about is that when we are that child, we don't have a way to stand up and, protect our own integrity and our own truth. Like there is no, especially if we are at young age, we don't even have a logic to comprehend what's happening. We're just being basically conditioned to the life of not following our own truth, not validating our own experience. And that's what changes into others' worth, right? That's what she said. So we don't have that self-worth. We're others' worth. And we can call it codependency, we can call it others' worth. I don't know how we can call it. There's probably a bunch of different psychological forms to call it. But basically then you walk through life not being able to experience your own self-worth as a human being. You're not being able to validate your emotions, validate your own thoughts, validate your own experience, and you basically open for abuse, misuse. Yeah. And I think that's why most of us end up in relationships with manipulators, because that's what makes us easy targets.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And then the flip side of the nascent reason is if a child has a truth, like a false truth. So the example she gives in the book is the child comes home from school let's say it's like a middle class or a lower middle class family. The child comes home and says, oh, it's so frustrating. The teacher always favors all the rich kids. And
that's how you create a narcissist.
yeah, well, but then the parent feeds into that and says, oh, you know what? Yeah, those rich people, like they're bad. They always get a leg up. It's not fair, you know. And then they feed into that child's reality of, yeah, rich people are the problem. Your teacher favors all the rich kids, which may or may not be true. So it's trying to keep an accurate perception. I would say racism is probably a better example of that. So something happens and then the parent starts skewing, or sexism, or any type of ism, hate, basically hate that's taught in the home comes from that. The child says, oh, this isn't fair. It's because, you know, I don't know, this kid was a whatever, insert fill in the blank, and then the parent chimes in, oh yeah, you know what, they get everything, and oh, those, you know, those stupid women, or those stupid minorities, or Jews, or whatever it is. And then the parent starts bashing a Buddhists or whatever the group is, and then feeds into this idea of, oh yeah, our problems are caused by this group of people.
Yeah,
which
that's
is a problem.
everything that is basically impacting your sense of reality by either taking you to something that is worse that's what's happening, or better than it's happening. Like, you're just not dealing with reality. It's
yeah. And okay, so here's probably a better example of the better than reality. It would be like, you see these shows like The Voice or American Idol, and you've got this person that comes in and they can't sing, and their family's like, they're so talented, they've been performing since they were 6, and they're just rooting them on. And you just think, I can totally see supporting somebody's dream, but it's very clear to everybody else in the room that your child can't sing. They might be able to sing if they had voice lessons.
Yeah.
But y'all are all wrapped up in this delusion that they can sing, and they can't. They can't hold a note, you know? And so that's a problem. And that's kind of what Healthy Love was talking about, where you're developing this false, kind of confidence without competence, like this level of delusion that really feeds into narcissism of like, oh, you're the best, you're number one. And it's like, no, my God, no, you're not. Like,
you just, like, how about we just be all average, normal, worthy of love, the way we are human beings? Someone told me, I don't remember, I had this discussion with someone. They said, oh, your favorite word must be average. I'm like, no, because I'm like, average is pretty good. We all are average, you know, like if you really look at us, we are just average, you know. It's fine. But I remember when I first discovered like what can, because, you know, I really believe that there is so much more to becoming a narcissist. Like, there's just so much happening to you, and inside of you, there's just so much. You can just do one thing bad, and you're not gonna create your child into, you know, a narcissist. But I was reading about it, and one of the things that really gets like stick to me is that it's not good to make your child feel more special or less special than they are. It's the best way is just to love them for who they are. And I've been always trying to do that. So I remember I was having this conversation with my daughter, and my friend heard me, and she's like, you're the funniest mom ever. I'm like, why? Because you said to your daughter, I love you. It's not that you're special. You just look normal. Like, you're just like everyone else, but I just love you so much for who you are. She's like, that was like compliment. I'm like, yes, because we're not special. We're just normal, you know? Yeah.
Well, and this is kind of off topic here, but Deborah is talking about her mom who is sick, and she's taken care of her now. And she's saying it's just getting to be too much and she can't do it anymore. And so just kind of switching gears a little bit. So yeah, one of the things that we got in one of the other books we read, the examples, and she gave this great example. I wish I could remember the book. It was on boundaries. And she said, it was the same example. So you have two different women.
It was codependency, I think. No, emotional blackmail.
Okay. I don't know. Anyway, so there's two different women. They both have mothers that are terminally ill.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so one woman decides, oh my goodness, it's my responsibility as the daughter. I've got to take care of her. She's my mother, even though, so I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to have her move in with me and I'm going to be her full-time caretaker, 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. She only wants me to take care of her. Nobody else knows how to cook and clean like I do. And so because whatever my mom wants, I need to be able to give it to her because I'm the daughter and that's what family is for. And so that's caretaking from a place of we're not also taking care of ourselves. We're giving and giving and giving way past what any normal, reasonable person could do without boundaries. I'll be on call. You can have a bell next to your bed, whatever you need, you let me know and I'll be there. And that's a problem. And that'll wear you out. It'll very quickly. So then the other example was the gal, same situation, mother was terminally ill. And so she realizes, okay, I want to be able to help take care of my mother, but from a place of healthy boundaries. And so she decides, okay, I'm also going to quit my job. But she could also say, you know what, I'm going to there's a wide variety of ways. I could cut back to 3 days a week, or I could keep working full time, have my mother move in with me, and then get staff, like a in-care aide that comes in 4 days a week. Like there's a variety of ways. Okay. Actually, so let's do it. Let's do it with healthier boundaries. Let's say she decides, okay, you know what, I'm going to switch down to part-time. My mother has 6 months to live. And so I'm going to have her move in with me. I'm going to work 3 days a week. I'm going to have an in-care health aide, even though my mother likes the food that I make and that but how I cook and clean, I'm going to delegate what I can to this other aide. So I can sleep at night. So I'm eating. So I can still go to the gym. So I can still go out with friends or to see my therapist and just recharge and take care of myself to where I'm not at her beck and call 24 hours a day, because that's going to exhaust her.
Yeah. But you can address that, based on what's true for you too. And because like the first woman did it from the one up position, I will take care of you because I can, I'm better. Like, like kind of, so that was the one up. You can be the one down. You're like, oh, I can't do this, I can completely give up. But if you look at it like from what's really true for you and you just put the same on the same level, you will create something that validates your mother experience as for the last 6 months of her life, so she will get to be a mom. Because like if you really look at what happened, if you make it in a dysfunctional way, you're not making your mom happy. You actually giving her guilt trips, probably you being passive aggressive because you're gonna be,
because there's that resentment that's building
yeah,
up.
there'll be resentment in there. But if you really create it from what's true for you, if you were inside of what's true for you and really connected to your experience of yourself, you will do it in a way that you're responsible for your self-care. Because you will do it in a way you will make sure that you got to enjoy your mom for the next 6 months. She will get to enjoy you because you want to create some good experiences for both of you. And if you are in true, you will see that it's okay to ask for help too, because you will see you need help. And I think if I don't know who asked the question, but if you need help in taking care of your mom, maybe you need bigger support system for yourself. You just have to figure out what's really working for you. It's healthy for you.
Yes. Okay, so let's move on to number 5. She says, the requirement for healthy boundaries is self-esteem or inherent worth, which is the central job of parenting.
Yes.
If you weren't properly parented, you can, so I wanted to add, if you weren't properly parented, you can still develop healthy boundaries, healthy self-esteem and healthy self-worth, but it's going to require that we parent our inner child as well as we focus on healing our emotional wounds caused by any form of trauma that we went through, bullying, abuse, or neglect.
Yes.
So, yes. And then, basically, okay, so point number 6, what you were saying is Having a good relationship involves sharing our truth with another and of talking and listening. And to be able, and I really like how she said this. She talks about unhealed trauma takes over our vocal cords and we slide back into the familiar roles. Lost child, hero, surrogate partner, surrogate parent, family counselor, mama's boy, daddy's girl. And we just think this is the way things are. It takes authentic self-esteem to give those abusive voices closure.
Yes.
And so then my question that I wanted people to kind of think about was to begin noticing the ways that you interact with others, especially when there is conflict or when they need help. Do you find yourself playing the same roles that you played as a child or like within your family dynamic?
No, I love that. And it's like great, like as a child, like if you can actually look at yourself, am I responding as me, an adult right now, or am I responding as this wounded child? And also, I think this is one of my favorite parts too, that, all this trauma creates like two kind of children inside of you. One is the originally wounded child, the very, very young child that we probably will call the inner child. And the other one is what she brilliantly called an adapted wounded child. So that's when you actually try to adjust to what's happening and be kind of mature about it. And we confuse that with us being an adult, like that this is the adult version of us. We have it all confused. So there is a hurt child inside of you, her child that kind of figured out how to pretend that he's okay. That's running a show a lot. It's you actually usually speaking to you as with the voice of the abuser, because it becomes like the inner critic, basically, that adapted wounded child. She didn't use the term inner critic, but I think that's like if you look at those two, that will be playing the same role inside of us. And then she says we need to reparent that. So we have to create a responsible, healthy, balanced, moderate adult version of us that can actually negotiate between those two crazy children inside of us talking at each other, right? And not knowing how to react, because the one will be like the one down, one up, getting angry, getting upset, throwing tantrums, and like whatever way you are reacting to stressful situations. And then only as that adult, you can have intimacy with people in a relationship, because as a child, and she's like, I love how she says, like, lots of clients that she works with under conflicts, they're not adults talking, they're two crazy children talking at each other, pretending to be adults, and there is absolutely no resolution.
Yeah. So let me go into that a little bit more. So what Healthy Love is talking about is these three people inside of us. We have the wounded child. This child is dependent and out of control. It's disassociating and it's overwhelmed. Then we have the adapted wounded child. The adapted wounded child is these skills that we have adapted, taken on in order to kind of navigate our environment. So the adapted wounded child takes a one-up power position and feels better than. So Mo, this is what you were talking about. Hides what he or she feels and manipulates in order to get what he or she wants. They are walled in and shut down. They are uptight and controlling. It's the voice that patients identify as the adult self. It's judgmental, controlling, and perfectionist. It parents the wounded child, and it sounds like the voice of the abusive parents.
Yes.
It makes them feel bad about themselves and robs them of their self-esteem. The sad irony is that the adult who doesn't repair this is as mature as they will get, and they mistakenly think that this wounded child is what being mature is, not knowing that they are dragging this wounded, mature child into adulthood, thinking that this is what maturity is. Then we have this third voice, that's the functional adult, that we have to learn to develop. The functional adult interrupts the conversation and affirms the existence of the others and also assures them that they now have a compassionate and mature parent to take care of them. They do not have to fight for survival by abandoning their authenticity. They are safe. And that functional adult is, as we are going through doing this inner child work, and we're developing, we're able to keep ourselves, to trust ourselves. We're able to keep ourselves safe. We're learning to have faith in our perceptions of reality. We're learning how to say yes when we mean yes and no when we mean no. We're learning what the difference is between toxic and healthy, and we're navigating all of this. That's the functional adult. And so when that functional adult steps in, it's able to acknowledge, oh my goodness, just like Mo, you were saying earlier, oh my goodness, that part that's lashing out in me, this is the adapted wounded child. And as the functional adult now, you can go over and give that child kind of a hug and just be like, I am so sorry, honey. Like, you have been working overtime trying to make things right, but the adapted wounded child might be 6 years old or 10 years old, and they don't know how to cope with things. They're only coping with things at that level of that trauma. And so as the functional adult, you can step in and say, you know what, okay, I'm here. Like, I'm learning how to keep you safe. I'm learning how to navigate things. I'm going to do the best job I possibly can. And like, I've got this. Like, I'm in charge now.
Yep. And I think that's when doing the child work, you can also do it on your inner child,
Yes.
which is really great. You can actually speak to yourself as the inner child, you know, the little child, you know, either the very young one or the little older one. And then you can also speak to your parents or whatever, you know, person that traumatized you. Can be coach, it can be classmate that bullied you. But what happens is, so I don't like the whole energy thing talking, but the way she said it, it was brilliant for me, because it's so true. Like, emotion is like an energy inside of you. And if you have too much of the emotion inside of you, and some of that emotion does not belong to you, like during the chair exercise, you can release it. Can actually say that because that was my favorite thing. We have like 3 different things we feel. We have our own feelings of what is actually happening. So this is like, let's say, oh God, let's say I'm talking to you, Dana, and you said something how you don't like my art. Right?
Okay.
Oh, someone told me they don't like my art because it's a message about abuse last week, and so I can say that example. So my first reaction was disappointment. So what I was feeling about was disappointment, but the other feeling, like, kind of reached my boundary. It was her she was angry with me that I'm speaking for victims and I'm expressing, you know, abuse through my art. She was angry and really upset. So my disappointment was covered up by a huge amount of anger, and I was angry for days and I couldn't figure out why I was angry. And you know what? It's because I took her anger on. It breached my boundary. She was angry. It wasn't me being angry. She was angry. So I love how Pia actually in the book explains how those emotions happen. When someone does not know how to contain their emotions and they're interacting with you, that emotion has an energetic impact on our experience, and like, it can bridge our boundaries even if we have good boundary. That's what I'm trying to say. Even if, because it's such a strong emotion. So, and we will have an emotion about their emotion also. So we really have 3, like, it's a three-way road over here. What do we feel about what's happening? What do we feel about what the other person is saying? And there, like, the empathy, like, we can empathize with their experience. That's the second thing. And the third thing is what they feel. It can be transferred on us. So then we have 3 different sources of emotion inside of us. And our job as a functional adult throughout, you know, in all the interaction is to take on the true, what's really true for us. So to make sure what are we feeling about what's happening, you know, that emotion is our true emotion. We got a right within healthy boundaries to empathize with other people's experience. That's fine. But then we need to filter and that was brilliant for me. I have to filter when people talk to me about stuff and what they think. I have to filter if I'm not taking their emotion on me, and if they bridge my boundaries, I need to deal with it in an appropriate way in the moment. And I don't know what will be the appropriate moment, in every situation way, but I'll figure it out because I'm a functional adult, so I can do that. So
yeah, and I think that functional adult, it's really all about reclaiming our power and realizing it's okay. We might not have all the answers, but you know what? We can figure it out. We can ask other people. We can Google it, and it might take a little while to kind of turn some things around, but you're capable. And
well, if someone, we're not gonna be reading it all now, but if someone really is curious about, I guess more like practical clues in how to speak with people and keep up the healthy boundaries in our communication, like what we say and how we listen, because she actually explains those with more details, and actually she shows all the different violations of the boundaries. Go for it. It's like you can really learn a lot from this book. I'm actually will be practicing some of those because like just a week ago, someone violated my emotional boundary by throwing at me all their anger, and now I know how to deal with that. So.
And I really do like the concept of chair work. And I think you were right on earlier when we were talking about that, about, it can bring up a lot of stuff. And if a person is going to be doing this one-on-one, well, I guess, but just by yourself at home, to start with something small and see how that goes. Because I think I'm also going to be doing a lot of chair work as well. It's interesting reading this book, and one of the things I think that kept me stuck in not moving forward in therapy for the longest time was I really minimized a lot of stuff that I went through. And I kept thinking like, oh, but other people have it worse. And so I kind of felt like I wasn't being grateful for, I just felt ungrateful. And I just felt bad. And so I didn't feel comfortable complaining about, I felt like I was complaining about my parents or about my childhood or about certain events in my life. And because of that, I never addressed any of them because I felt like other people have it so much worse and I should just be glad,
It's like you have a transferred emotion of ungratefulness from someone else's because you do not look like someone who's ungrateful. Do you know what I mean? Like you could have that emotion virtue in there's an emotion like ungratefulness. What would be the emotion? Shame? No. What would it be?
Well, I think it was feeling ungrateful. And, my mom and I've had this conversation before because whenever I had brought up things, she would always say, oh, you kids had it so much better than I did. And
she transferred the ungratefulness.
She transferred this, and it wasn't intentional. I mean, she really, really had a rough childhood. She really did. And I don't think that she meant to minimize what I went through, but it was just sort of like, I mean, we even had this conversation not too long ago. She was, it was so heartbreaking because she was crying and she's like, she was like, I did everything that I knew how to do. And so, she had us in therapy and she was in therapy and it was just this really intense moment. And it was sort of like, she did the best she could at the time. And I told her, I said, you truly did the best that you could do. You weren't just like one of these parents that does nothing and then says, oh, I did the best I could do. Like, no, you actually worked at it. You identified things. You broke a lot of cycles. Like she did a really good job in a lot of ways. And so I don't know. I guess the point of that is with chair stuff, I think it can be really powerful. And I think it can. So what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying like, I would prefer to do this kind of stuff alone because I felt so guilty. I had all this guilt and shame whenever I would go talk to a therapist of, I don't feel comfortable airing a lot of my family stuff because there's still that part of me that feels oh, I should just be grateful, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
more comfortable doing it one-on-one, and it's still hard. I'm 40, almost 41 years old. It's still hard to be able to think about even confronting an empty chair and pretending that that's a significant person in my life and what I would say. But I feel like that would be very healing just to get that energy out, because I
Yeah.
feel like I have been pushing it down for so long, because I had this idea, this attitude of I need to settle for crumbs and be grateful for it.
Yeah. And I think that all
Mm.
those, like, once we start doing the, like, I think she said somewhere that once you start releasing all that emotion that wasn't meant for you, you actually stop overreacting or underreacting to things, and because you get attached to your true level of, like, functional appropriate reaction to what's happening. So I'm gonna be doing, actually gonna talk to my therapist to do some of the chair work, because I think I want to address my father and my abusers, in that. So I wouldn't do it alone with abusers, but I've done some inner child work, reparenting. I was doing Richard Grannon, the inner critic course, and there is something similar. It's not a tremor, but you kind of like, there's like a mini hypnosis you listen to, and in that you kind of get in touch with what's the perfect parent would be for you, and like you kind of let the inner parent talk to you, stuff like that. So it's like, if you want to do some positive stuff, I think like you can do it alone, because I've done that alone. I've had some strong emotions, like I was crying, but it wasn't at the hysterical, like, emergency kind of level. It was fine. So trust yourself. Like, if you think you can handle some of the work, do it. That's a good idea.
And I had an interesting conversation with a friend the other day. I forget, we were talking about PTSD or some sort of trauma, and and I don't remember who the person, I think, I don't know, somebody that she works with or something, but she was saying, like, basically, like, oh, well, this person didn't really go through so much. She's like, it's not like they were abused or molested or like had major stuff in their life. And
How dare you say that to someone?
I know, well, right? Like, and that's how we unintentionally minimize other people. And so I had made the comment to her. I said, 'cause I used to think the exact same way of, like, what did that person go through? Like, they, like, what, like, I've actually had this conversation with two friends now that I'm thinking about it. And my other friend was talking about her sister. And she's like, my sister was just diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I would say her sister's a pretty extreme case of it. And she's like, but she didn't go through anything. And she's like, I know she would have told me had she. And what's so interesting about this, and where I think so many of us get stuck, is we think, well, she didn't go through anything from my perspective.
Yeah,
Right?
even though that's like true.
Her sister is a lesbian and was denied her sexuality for 40 years. Her parents didn't accept it. They shamed her. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that she went through, but it was sort of like, if we're minimizing everything outside of rape and murder, then we're silencing a lot of people, right? And so to view others' pain in terms of our own is a way that we're minimizing them and we're minimizing ourselves. It's whatever a person went through that caused them trauma, that's valid. And that can cause a tremendous amount of destruction in a person's life if it's not healed.
Yeah, like, I think for me, what's important is, like, lots of people minimize psychological abuse because it's invisible, and like, that's what ruined my life, really, that the psychological abuse, and not being able to prove, because I don't have a scar on my body. It wasn't there, I couldn't show, and like, people wouldn't, so what, he just said that to you, and why did you make it mean that about you? Like, why would you let that impact you that much? People don't get how psychological abuse can build up so extremely that, hello, you have a psychotic breakdown, you're being taken to the hospital in a freaking straitjacket, you know, and then you spend next 8 years of your life feeling completely crazy and out of your mind because you do not know what's reality anymore, you know, for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, I that's why I will be like, okay, I have to say honestly, it's easy to be in that space when you do want to minimize because we do want to compare our experiences sometimes, you know, so we have to be vigilant of that.
Yeah.
But if we really get on that, you know, that, so here's the thing, if I get my value from who I really am, then I don't need to minimize or maximize anyone else's experience because I'm not gonna be one up or one down.
Yes.
I'm a human, you are a human. My experience, yeah, like I've dated 5 narcissists, you've only dated 2. So what?
Right.
Like
Right.
there's no only, right? There is no only. Like if I say it at the with the same level, I've dated 5 narcissists. You dated 2 narcissists. Okay, let's talk. My experience was this. Your experience was that. This is my valid. This is your valid. True. We can share it, and we don't share it in order to prove anything, to cause anything. We just share it because we are 2 human beings. We're sharing our experiences, and it's okay.
Well, and I think that's the difference, right? So getting out of that one up, one down position and viewing another person as an equal. And when a person's vulnerable and they say, oh my God, like this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And another, as another human being, you realize, okay, I don't have to, I'm not threatened by their experience or by their lack of experience. And I
Yeah.
can still relate to them um, on an equal, like human being feeling level of, oh my goodness, that must have been really difficult for you. I'm so sorry
Yeah.
this happened, you know, and it is difficult, especially when you meet people that haven't gone through a whole lot in their life. And it can be easy to kind of brush that off. But if it's
Yeah.
pain to them, then it's pain to them. And they don't have any perspective outside of their own, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move forward because we've got two
Oh,
more.
we're done. Oh, we have 2 more. Oh, I thought we done. I'm
No,
sorry.
no. Two more. We have not, girl, we've got quite a chunk to do. Okay. So okay, point number 7, a lack of containment is often at the center of troubled relationships. If
Where is it me? Lack of containment.
oh, we become dysfunctional if we cannot properly contain our energies behind healthy boundaries or filter the incoming energies through of others through our healthy boundaries. When we become boundaryless, we allow in too much from another person and send out too much from ourselves. A relationship with a person with no boundaries involves no self containment. They may be too loud, too sexual, too emotional, too controlling, too demanding, or all of the above. A healthy relationship and true intimacy are only possible within the constructs of healthy boundaries. And she goes on to say, when people in relationships communicate their authentic selves to one another, they seek intimacy. And they are, so this is just what we were talking about. They are neither hostile or defensive, walled off or resentful. We share intimacy with our bodies, our emotions, and our thoughts. When we receive communication from our partner without shame, fear, or panic, and can present our truth with love or at a minimum of with respect.
Respect.
When we are sent energies, we must choose to accommodate only the energies and truths that fit us. I love that. Pia.
Yes.
So Pia, I love that. If someone starts to unload or project, you can see something is wrong with their emotional state, and we
Yeah.
don't have to accept that perception as our truth.
Yeah. That's like what happened to me last week. And it was brilliant. I was reading this book when I got this anger, and I realized that wasn't my anger at all. So yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But
And
so I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I just remember because I'm gonna forget it because I don't look at my notes. I got this whole lack of containment. So when I was an abused young mother, I remember every time I took my daughter and I would hold her, she would cry because I wasn't responsible for dealing with my whatever pain was that, or anxiety and everything. And it was gone my child, you know? It wasn't contained in me. So like right now, like when I'm as a functional and adult, I get that my job is to deal with my feelings and emotions in a healthy way for me, so they don't impact another human being. And I can really sense, like, that's how I got like, oh, there is an energy, because the newborn, she was feeling the energy of the emotion, what's happening with me. Like it was crossing to her, like the dogs, like if you don't have babies, you have dogs react to when you are anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Like they pick up on it, right? Because
Right.
it's energy. So like it's very, I don't know, it's almost like I was reading it and so many things just make sense to me. Like it just became so like logical, like that, like you have to deal with what you feel. You cannot hide how you feel. You cannot, if you deny how you feel, you will project it. If you deal with it in an unhealthy way, you will project it.
It's going to come out in some way, shape, or form. It's going to come out in, like you said, either projecting onto other people, becoming defensive or hostile, self-harm, cutting, gaining a bunch of weight, eating disorders of any kind, losing a bunch of weight, drinking too much, being promiscuous, or we'll actually go into this here in just a second. But yeah, that's the thing, is there's no getting around it. So learning to set boundaries and having functional. Okay, so actually let's just move on to it, because she does such a great job of explaining this. I've never heard this explained this way before. And I just want to write her a thank you card, because she just did such a good job with it. She basically chunks down boundaries into 7 different types. You have the external, and if you guys want to follow along, let me put this link, because this is kind of a big section here. Let me put this link again in the chat.
Brilliant.
Okay. So we're on point number 7, right? Yeah, 7 right now. So we have 7 different types of boundaries. We have external physical containment, external sexual protective, external sexual containment, listening boundary, internal talking boundary, internal talking containment. And she says, most of us maintain our dysfunctional normality by either going silent or walling in. So we call that fortressing, or lashing out and becoming uncontained, which is both of those, the walling in and fortressing, and the lashing out and becoming completely uncontained and very dysregulated, and the reactive abuse, and even so emotionally triggered that we're lashing out at people. They could be total strangers. Very common responses to trauma. But it's important that we realize that this is a problem, and it's something that we need to heal. So she goes through, so she views the boundaries as, you either have a functioning boundary.
That's a healthy one.
The healthy boundary, right? So it's functional. You have the overly functioning one, which is basically the fortressing or a wall. And then you have the non-existent boundary, which is, which is what did she call it? The non-existent, like lack of containment.
Lack of containment, yeah.
So the external physical boundary, that establishes our distance and non-sexual touch for others in relation to ourselves. So that would be giving people personal space. How close are you talking to them? Are you putting your hand on their shoulder? Are you anything that's non-sexual? So your physical interactions with other people. If that boundary is functioning, we decide who is going to touch us, how close we will permit other people to get to us, and whether we permit them to touch our private property, like your purse or your suitcase or a backpack or your wallet, any personal property. When that boundary is a wall, the individual never lets anyone get near, nor do they permit anyone to touch their personal property. When that boundary is non-existent, the individual will let anyone get in their face or touch them physically. They will permit anyone to get into their private property without saying anything.
That was me.
Yeah.
That was so freaking me.
And this stuff happens in both little and big ways. And so some examples of this, what I know a lot of people struggle with, is learning to date again, or getting out there and being ready to date again. And so it can be little things like, a person putting their hand on your knee, or asking for a kiss goodnight, or just going in for a kiss goodnight and you're not comfortable with that, or them, I don't know, taking your purse and putting it in the back seat, or things like that, that just feel off, but we might not feel like this is very valid, because it's like, well, because we can justify it, right? Like, oh, well, I mean, I guess it's normal for a person to want to be kissed at the end of a first date. And I mean, he only put his hand on my knee, and, but that goes back to, it's the perception of reality. Like, if it's uncomfortable for you, then it's uncomfortable. And it doesn't matter what your best friend or your therapist or your next door neighbor or your mother think about it. If it's uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable. And it's important that we draw that boundary. And so if somebody does, I actually used to just be upfront with guys and just say, I just want you to know, like, I don't kiss on the first date.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I would also make it a coffee date, because I didn't want I didn't want to feel obligated, and I didn't want them to feel resentful of, hey, I'm forking over, $50 for dinner, and like, are you here for a free meal? So I just didn't want any awkwardness there. And so I would meet him for coffee. I would buy my own drink. It was just a date to see if there was a connection. And then we would go our separate ways, because I would feel obligated. I didn't like feeling obligated. I still don't like feeling obligated. So,
but it's a valid point you have, because you were able to say it. And I think, like, I don't know, like, the boundaries make more and more sense to me. They're like this whole system.
Yeah.
So, like, you cannot address, like, if you don't have a good, like, verbal boundaries and expressing, like, saying what you're really feeling and thinking, you wouldn't be able to say, hey, I don't kiss on the first date or whatever. And you wouldn't be able to protect your physical boundary. And, like, even later on, when she gives all the different clues about, let's say, protecting your psychological boundaries, like, don't tell me what to think. If in order for you to express yourself really and protect your psychological boundary, you need to be in a safe physical boundary first, to feel safe, secure, in your physical body first. So it's great, because it's like, really, if you look at it as a system, like, your job as a functional adult is to make sure that you are physically safe, and you are emotionally safe, you are sexually safe, you are intellectually safe, psychologically safe, all of that, and play with it all.
Well, and it's this period of growth, right? So like, as you're all of this stuff starts to come into focus, you're going to continue to do things differently. It's just seriously just this evolution of understanding, and it's just absolutely life-changing. Alcuda Babe makes the comment, she says, I find that when we talk in I statements, I get that we are explaining how we feel, but that's a degree of vulnerability. But how can we be vulnerable around people who abuse us? It feels natural to want to coil in. So that's what Healthy Love was talking about earlier, is I think the first deciding factor is this person emotionally safe? So if they've been abusive, then yes, it is a mistake to continue to open up to them. If we're going to be assertive, then it's more of, we know we're not trying to really reach a solution. We're setting limits, and we're setting consequences. So we're saying, you know what, it's not okay for you. I don't appreciate being yelled at. Basically, it's okay for you to be frustrated. It's okay for you to be angry, but it's not okay for you to yell at me. And so we're just being very upfront about it. and not trying to go into it and explain it or justify it. And then if they come back and they don't respect that boundary, then at that time we need to do something different. So instead of standing there and continuing to reset it, we need to be able to tell ourselves, okay, this means I need to somehow basically start distancing myself from this person. So, okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you said it that way, because I feel that there is the only boundary that will work with an abuser is no contact or physical distance. Like, no, it's don't interact with them.
Right. You're dealing with somebody that has non-existent boundaries.
Yeah. So there is no way for you to have a healthy boundary with inside of the interaction with abuser. You can't share experience with them. They're gonna use it to hurt you. You cannot tell your preferences to them. They're gonna use it to hurt you. Whatever you're gonna say to them inside of setting up healthy boundaries with them, they're gonna use it to hurt you. So.
Right. And it sucks because sometimes we feel like that we're the one being punished, right? So like if it's your family and you keep saying, hey, you know what? Like seriously, that hurts my feelings when you guys talk, when you're making fun of my weight or my appearance, like knock it off. And they're like, oh, we're just joking. It's like, yeah, I get that you think you're joking, but it's rude and it's not funny to me. So knock it off. And sometimes, then it's hard. It's like, okay, then we distance ourselves, then we're spending less and less time with them, but then it's like everybody else over there is having a great time, all making fun of all bullying each other. Right. And we're sitting home alone on Christmas Eve. And that's hard. And this is a big part of setting boundaries when we realize we've been trying to make these dynamics work for so long with people that just don't respect us. And it's,
I'm also spending Christmas alone. I'll be honest with you. And you know what? I realized that when I was actually 14 years old, that's when I set a first time healthy boundary for myself, and I avoided being in touch with person who's abused me as a child. And I actually spent, I think, 3 Christmases in a row alone in the house. My mom went to the village to spend it with her parents. She took my daughter, my sister. And one day of Christmas, I spent by myself, and my mom didn't know I'm protecting myself. But looking back, I was like, wow, I had guts. I actually refused to go there. And that was me standing up for myself, So if a 14-year-old can choose to spend Christmas alone, because that's the healthy, I think you as an adult, you can choose whatever is healthy for you too,
And it helps to start meeting other people. And this is what we talk about, like growing your support circle instead of trying to, it's kind of the equivalent of like you continue to go to the fridge and it's full of rotten food, but we don't want to clean anything out because then we're like, well, then we have nothing to eat. But the reality is that we don't have anything to eat now. It's this false sense of abundance and false sense of nourishment, and getting actually getting nourishing things in its place, then there's not so much of a void.
Yep. Like your buckets. I don't know when you got this bucket theory, but keep your buckets.
Keep your buckets full.
Yeah, keep your buckets full, people.
It really does help. Okay, let's move on.
Over sexual boundaries, the next one.
Well, let me go. I'm just going to go in order. So, okay, external physical containment boundary.
Oh, okay.
Establishes distance and non-sexual touch for ourselves in relation to others. So the other one was in physical touch in relation from others to us. And the containment boundary is for physical touch from us to other people. So now when it's functioning properly, we're not intruding into somebody else's physical space. We're not becoming physically inappropriate. We're not touching their belongings without permission. When this is a wall, we don't approach other people. We don't stand close or touch to them. We never get near their personal things. If it's non-existent, if we have no self-containment, then we're driven by our whims. We touch other people, we get in their space, we get in somebody's face when we get upset, we get into their private stuff without asking for permission. It's just, and that's this, if you can tell, like the repeating theme here is with this lack of containment. It's like abusive mentality over and over and over and over again. There's just that lack of ability to work with a sense of mutuality, with understanding of other people. Okay, so number 3, external sexual protective boundary. So this is, so when it's functioning, as we meet someone that we're interested in, we decide who, when, where, and how somebody is going to be sexual with us.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wall that's up when an individual's external sexual protective boundary is a wall. They never respond to sexual approach. They act as if it weren't happening, and they refuse to be sexual. So they're completely frigid and walled off. If it's non-existent, then an external, they won't say no to any sexual approach. They're incredibly promiscuous. They're very sexual with anyone who wants to be sexual with them.
Yep.
Which is, not only it's unsafe physically, and it's unsafe emotionally.
It's completely unsafe. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's usually a sign that someone had sexual abuse in their childhood too. So
yeah,
it's something to deal with.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, and I'm gonna be very brave about it. I dealt with non-existent sexual boundaries in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had a long history of sexual abuse, and I've been raped, and I really don't say it to trigger anyone. So I'm trying to be very peaceful when I talked about it. But it's possible we have people in chat who did have a similar experience. So we're not talking about it to make anyone feel bad about themselves. Like when I read it, like there is always some sort of like shame, like kind of, like trying to get on me, because like, being someone who is not able to say no to sexual invitation, and being promiscuous, basically people call it being slutty or whatever, right? And like it creates that kind of very negative image. Here's the thing. It's all right if it happens to you, and because it's unhealthy and unsafe, deal with it. Like I've dealt with it. I know it was difficult. Saying no was hard. I was unable to say no. It was a fight of my life to say no. I was unable. My throat, my mouth would not, because my response was freeze.
Mm-hmm.
So no, like freeze. So basically people could do whatever they wanted to do to me. And they did anything they wanted to do to me. I was unable to say no. So it took me saying no first here's the thing. If you have breached a boundary like that, it's not gonna be only in sexual situations. It's gonna be in your communication. Yeah. It's gonna be at work. It's gonna be in your family. It's gonna be in your friendships. I wasn't able to say no to friends. It was everywhere. So you do not embark on saying no in sex first. Try learning how to say no. As a process in all those things you're capable of saying now. Just those little things. And grow on it.
And I think a lot of times the whole sexual boundary thing, it can fly under the radar for a lot of people, especially I think for women, especially nowadays. It's like this idea of oh, I am empowered. I'm in control of my body, and I'm just going to sleep around as much as I want because I'm in charge and I'm in control. And that's fine if a person wants to do that. I mean,
no, that will be the adapted one.
I agree. I really don't think that that's healthy.
I've been there. It's not healthy. I've been there.
You're right. It's not. I think it's important for people to examine any type of like extreme behavior, especially if it's potentially dangerous. I mean, if you're taking strangers home into your house, you don't know them. And so it's not coming from like a moral righteousness place.
No.
Because I was very much the same way when I was younger. And like, it's, it's sad. And I think for me, it definitely flew under the radar of like, oh, this is just what it means to be empowered. And
this culture now really embraces that too. Like I had a conversation with my daughter that it's because she heard some conversation of kids during class speaking about the appointment, you know, the part of the body appointment, right?
oh,
So, yeah, like, so can you imagine a 16-year-old girl creates already like basically booty call scenarios?
yeah.
And my daughter shared it with me, and so there was an opportunity for me to talk to her. I spoke with her. Actually, I shared with her some of my experience that I've had problem with saying no because I've been abused, and then some of the things happen, and then it just became normal. Like it's a normal culture. People just have sex with anyone, blah blah blah. But I said to her, but I realized there's a huge impact on you, and it's not healthy. It's not emotionally healthy. It's not safe. There's just so much about having sex with another person.
Yeah. And I think it can fly under the radar of like, oh, especially if it's coming from a parent, oh, mom, dad, you're just so outdated. Because it is, we really do live in this hookup culture.
People
And
hooking up, yep.
And I think too, like what you mentioned, you're like, no, it's not healthy. You're right. And I think we're also living in this very politically correct culture, the sort of like, everything is fine. And you're right. Like I do think that it is a problem that people are hooking up so much, and it does damage intimacy, and it does damage a person's ability to relate to others. And I'm not saying that from a place of shaming. I'm saying it from a place of like, I think it's important that we really examine our behavior and really get clear on like what is empowering behavior and what is dangerous behavior.
I have absolutely no right to shame anyone who listens to this conversation because I'm fresh out of it. It's been just last fall when I started to really say no.
Yeah.
So I'm really short in that period of time. And actually it was through this chat. Someone said something to me in the chat on one of your live streams. And and I knew already that's something I have to deal with, but the way they said it was just like really inspiring to me. So we have a really great community, and I think that's important to know, guys, that like I'm being impacted also by chats over here. But yeah, I'm the one that just freshly started creating that boundary, to honor myself and to be in my truth, because I had I want to go back a little bit to the book. I had to get that I was acting out as this wounded, sexually abused child, and I was trying to be powerful about it. So I was this adopted, wounded child, and I was running the show, but I never gave myself an experience of being intimate and a sexual when I'm ready. I've never gave myself that experience, like when it's true for me to do that. So it's kind of crazy that I'm saying it now because I met someone and we've been talking and we met already, and I'm not ready to be sexual with him, but this is the first time I'm experiencing that, like it's a good thing, like I built up this boundary for myself when it's all about, is it true for me to be sexual enough with you or not? And right now it's not. And I respect my own experience and I respect someone else's experience. Like if it's like we need to kind of negotiate our experiences, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What's true for me doesn't have to be true for you, but we need to find a way to respect, that word of experiences.
Yeah.
So no shame.
Yes.
Never. No shame. And don't shame me, please, in the comments later because I'll be crying. I'll have a wonder child like reaction, and I call Dana like ah.
Okay, let's move on to the internal listening boundary. The internal listening boundary empowers us to sort through the ideas and emotions that are being directed at us, allowing inner access only to ideas and emotions that we deem appropriate. This selection process is controlled by what we know of our authentic self, by how intimate we are with our truth. Our desire to protect our authentic self, our authenticity from damage, is therefore self-esteeming, an act of self-love on behalf of our authenticity. To exercise this boundary appropriately, we need space. We cannot feel coerced, and we need enough room to sort and filter incoming intellectual and emotional energy. So she says, the goal of the listening boundary is to discover the emotional identity of the person who is talking to us. If we remain confident in our role of investigator, we will not wall out the other person because of distaste or fear of what we may learn, because if we do, our source of information disappears. We also must remind ourselves not to be so open that we forfeit our ability to sort, filter, and reject. We have to determine if what we are hearing is true, untrue, or questionable. When we hear words we believe to be true, we allow the information to get close to us. We permit ourselves to have feelings about what we are hearing, and we can identify what we are feeling. Is it anger or fear, love or lust, shame or guilt? It's important that we're able to identify whose feelings are whose, as we do not want to be overwhelmed with empathetic energy, because when in that case, we lose contact with our true self. And I really like that. So that just goes back to another person can say whatever they're going to say, but we have to, when we talk about, you've heard me talk about keeping your hurt feelings and your self-worth in two different buckets, because people are going to say whatever they're going to say. And we don't have control over that. But that doesn't mean that we have to let that chip away at our self-worth. And we can realize, you know what you're saying is a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of me. So you can call me all these different names. That doesn't mean that we're not going to take corrective action and distance ourselves from that person. But it does mean that we're like, you know what, you're being a bully. Like, this is not okay. And I don't accept any of this. I don't accept your.
I mean, it's okay to say that, but I don't think it's
in our mind
to say that, you know?
We can say that in our mind.
In the mind, we could just think like, oh, you're being a bully. We can think that, because I think the biggest point here is you do not argue the other person's experience, and you don't have to interact with it or counteract it.
So a way to address that would be, if you're feeling bullied, to say, you know what, I'm feeling really bullied right now, and I don't appreciate this, and would you please stop? But I would tell myself in my mind, I would probably say something like, you know, after I would think about it, like, yeah, this is bullying behavior. They're not stopping. I've drawn a boundary. They're continuing to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think it is important that we are grounded in our perception of truth. And when a person we can kind of tell what's really going on, if it's us or them, because we'll have things to point to. You know, we told this person we don't like it, they continue doing it. That's a boundary violation.
Yeah.
You know, we've set this boundary 3 different times. Okay, this is a continual boundary violation. This person's not emotionally safe. I need to do something different.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But I had this thought when you just were saying it, that I wonder if there is this point in our development inside of our healthy boundaries, when someone, like, let's say someone is bullying us, saying something that is really not nice to us, but we don't even get that emotion in, because we are so true to our own experience that it's like Zen masters, like, yeah. It's like, this is your anger, this is your bullying, this is yours. You know?
I've had that in certain instances, and it really is cool. But I think it depends on the button that person's pushing.
That's what I'm saying. I wonder what would it take for me to be in that zone most of the time.
Well, I think it helps when you're able, I think when you just make that mental shift of realizing that other people's communications with you is always a reflection of them. And because that's all of us. And it's when we interact with others, it's a reflection of us. And so it's making that shift of just being reactive with everybody, like having those functional boundaries, and because everybody's reacting from their perception of truth to everybody else.
But that means you have to be in the space of the functional adult most of the time.
Yes, exactly.
That's the only place you can see that, because if you are a wounded child, you do not see that.
Exactly. You're just reactive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, or you're just associating, and yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Okay, so the difference is here, functioning. If a person has a functioning internal listening boundary, if somebody's projecting onto us or insulting us, we can see it as a reflection of them and not of us. We're
Mm-hmm.
able to filter out what other people are saying and take in only truth. We can match our truth against what we are hearing and take in only what is true for us. When what is being said is questionable or untrue, we keep it out or we do not react to it, letting it pass through us without effect.
I love that.
Yeah, if a person has a wall there, then they don't listen to others at all, even if it's important or accurate. And that's just almost that level of like delusion with
Yeah.
narcissists where you're like, dude, like you're not, this is like, you're like, here is reality and here's what you're telling me. Here are the lies that you're telling me. Like this woman's pregnant and you're telling me that you've never met her before. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not listening to anybody. And even if the court is saying they're ordering them to pay child support, like they're not hearing anything. They've tuned everything out. If a person has a non-existent boundary, then we listen. This is important. This is where a lot of people.
Very important. That's a psychological abuse gate open, wide open.
Yes. And this is where it just, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So damaging. When it's a non-existent listening boundary, we listen to everything a person has to say. We take it at face value and we take it to heart, regardless of how hateful, hurtful, inaccurate, or untrue it is. And like I was saying, this is where keeping your hurt feelings and your self-worth in two different buckets go. And it's normal to have hurt feelings when somebody says something hurtful, but we don't have to let other people, especially pathological, deeply disturbed people, define who we are. And if they're telling us, oh, you're worthless, you're this, you're that, you're the other thing, just realize like, you know what? And this comes back to like having self-value is like, no, you know what? There's a lot of things that are right about me.
Yeah.
Like I might not be perfect and I might make mistakes, but I don't accept that garbage because there's a lot that I do right. And I have a growth mentality and I'm always open to learning and I learn from my mistakes and like, no. Yeah. So you can keep your limiting beliefs to yourself.
Except that I think it's important to mention that non-existent boundaries, it doesn't mean that it's like, it could be out of that covert abuse when you were just neglected and your parents didn't teach you. You know what I mean? So it doesn't, how to say that? God, I'm losing the thought because I'm having such a bad headache. It's almost like there doesn't need to be such a hard, like you can be just this naive child that was not parented, and taught better to follow your own perception, like you just didn't develop that. That's what I'm trying to say. So we're not talking here only about people who are being like actively abused. Like you can be pretty well healthy functioning, not like healthy functioning person. I'm losing my mind. Oh my goodness, what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say it doesn't have to be such a big trauma for you to not have non-existent boundaries in listening, basically.
Oh, totally. I'm not even sure. Yeah. I'm not even sure if that even has to.
It doesn't have to be a thing.
Yeah. Like the wounding, she talks about this, it can be done in like covert and overt ways.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, it can be done in ways that are more active or passive. And so if a child, let's say they're raised in like a Norman Rockwell kind of home and they have never really been taught this kind of stuff of what healthy boundaries are and that they're not.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, they're not prepared for the outside world and they come across their first bully in school or at work and then they've never been talked to like that before. And
so you don't have to look for drama in your life if you struggle with it. No, the point is not always to find something dramatic that happened to you that made you that way. What's more important is to reparent yourself and learn those boundaries.
Yeah. And I think the good thing with this is once we realize, like I said, I love the way that she spells all this out because once you can see this is healthy, this is, it's like the three little bears, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's just right. Yeah. And can tell where your boundaries are in this, and then what to steer into. Because if without direction, if a person's like, okay, I'm setting boundaries, I'm being assertive, like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to be doing. This is just excellent, 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 excellent.
Yep.
Okay, so internal talking boundary is how we approach significant people in our lives, our partner, with our thoughts or emotions. Our goal is to communicate our truth without manipulation, as manipulation is controlling and toxic and destroys intimacy. And manipulation, so you've probably heard us talk about, like, it's not only narcissists that do this, but it oftentimes is codependent people. And it's basically anybody that's not comfortable with being assertive. So
that's what I was trying to say. Oh
yeah.
God, I lost my thought completely. Yes.
So that's really important to see. Basically, any form of like inauthentic communication is a form of manipulation. And with codependent people, there's not that nefarious intent there. It's that they're not comfortable being direct and stating their wants. They might not even really know what their wants and needs are.
They're not even connected to their true basically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so the functioning internal talking boundary states just the facts without any shaming or accusations. So the example, you've got family members that's teasing you about your appearance. You would say, you know what, I really don't appreciate being teased about my appearance. Like, you're just stating the facts. Putting up a wall would be shutting down and not communicating any hurt feelings, any upset, or anything that would result in real confrontation or conflict. And then non-existent boundaries would be raging, shaming, blaming, accusing, or projecting. And I will say from my own experience, I struggle with when those buttons are pushed and those wounds are deep, to address things in the moment. And it's okay to not address things in the moment. Because I know, like, I had a recent incident, well, it was like 6 months ago with my mother. And I was like, I can't address this while I'm under the same roof with her, because I'm just going to start crying, and I'm probably going to start screaming. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want to say a bunch of things that I can't be unsaid. And I want to be able to work towards a solution and not have her just brush me off as being too emotional. And so it took me several months to bring it up again, and I brought it up through text message. No, actually I didn't. We were talking on the phone, and I'd said, this happened a while ago. I feel like I need to bring it up. This really hurt my feelings, but I was in an emotionally neutral place where I was able to discuss it, and we were able to have a conversation about it and get it resolved. And, so I think it's part of knowing yourself, like, okay, if you like, this is not, if I bring it up right now, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Don't bring it up. Like, it's okay to wait until you
waited until you could share it, just to share it for what happened to you without blaming, right? So you basically waited until you could be an adult about it.
Yeah, that functional adult, getting that functional adult in charge. Exactly.
It's hard because often, it's not always that we're gonna be perfect and we're gonna explode once in a while, we all human, and it's all right.
I think it happens less and less. And again, I love the way that she describes that. You've got your wounded child, your adapted wounded child, and then your functional adult.
I love it.
Sort of like, okay, and I think it can be helpful too to think about, okay, who's steering the ship right now? And when you have those moments when you are triggered, to be able to tune into that, okay, who's steering the ship? And that'll be incredibly, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity. And you can really examine.
Yeah.
It can be so insightful. We all have wounding, and we all have buttons. And so that's kind of the benefit almost of when a button is pushed and we find ourselves really reactive. It's a signal of, okay, there's something more there. I need to do a deeper dive. But I think that's a good place. Yeah, it's a good place to start, is by figuring out, okay, what is the wound and who's in charge?
Yep, totally.
Okay, so number 7, last one, is internal talking containment boundary. which is telling the truth in a respectful way, making sure it doesn't come across as explosive or offensive. And a functioning boundary is concentrating on telling the truth in a respectful manner of, this really hurt my feelings. I really didn't appreciate that. The wall never tells anybody what's important to them. The non-existent boundary says whatever comes to mind without monitoring whether or not it's true. It doesn't care whether that person is speaking respectfully.
I think saying this really hurt my feeling is like a level better than saying you made me hurt. But I think I really like how she suggests to say, be like really clear about what happened. So like say, hey, when I saw this and this and that, I made it mean this and this, and I made myself feel, or I made myself think, because I think that will give you always most access to, like what's happening.
Well, I think, so there's a part in the book just for other people. So she talks about going through an event and really, really being vulnerable and open. So one of the examples is there's some coworkers and one, we'll call them Brian and Linda. And Brian is giving a presentation and Linda kind of pushes away from the desk and gets up and leaves the room. And afterwards, Brian says, you know what, you really made me look stupid in there. I didn't appreciate that at all. That was so freaking rude. And what's wrong with you? And really just tears into her. Okay. Yeah. But the reality was Linda got up to go to the bathroom. Okay. And so Pia Mellody was saying, okay, then one of the ways that he could have said it was, I was really hurt that you got up and left during my presentation. I was feeling embarrassed and I was kind of wondering like what happened. And then she also kind of elaborated and said like he could have said, I felt really unimportant and this, that, and the other. However, I disagree with that. I think that's oversharing and I don't
think they were co-workers. I think they were a married couple.
No, because it was a presentation.
They were co-workers?
Okay. They were co-workers.
I thought that they were couples that had a business together. I missed that point, I guess.
Oh, maybe I missed. I don't know if they were couples.
Yeah, if they were couples,
it would be appropriate.
Yes, in a couple would be appropriate. Do not say two co-workers.
Yeah. Okay. So I missed that. So yeah, I think, but I don't know. Even then, I don't know if I would feel comfortable going into that level of detail of like the story that I invented in my mind was X, Y, and Z. And
no, you don't. I don't think you have to say it. That's ridiculous. Like some of it was really ridiculous to me. I mean, like who the heck has time to have a 25 minutes conversation about what they made, what think about what they sell, blah, blah, blah. Like that's crazy. But I think there is a big power in for each of us to be really responsible for our experience, that no one and nothing made you feel anything.
Yes, I agree.
I thought I made and why I say that is because if you get that, then you have access to making yourself feel happy every single day, just because you can.
Yeah. Well, when you realize that you're in charge of your thoughts and your feelings and your actions, it is an absolute game changer. And so, yes, I agree. It does make it easier if we start things with I statements. Like I really had my feelings hurt.
Yes.
Right? Or being able to identify it. Even the parts where she goes into more depth and says, I made up this story that, you got up because you thought I was stupid and my presentation was boring and
boring.
I do think that there's value in that for us to play it out in our own mind and examine, okay, what was the story that I was telling myself with this? I think there is value in that, but I don't know if I'd share that with others. That's a little much.
And it's like, especially like we are out of abusive relationships, and like even if you just start dating, if you start dating someone, you're not gonna be saying all that because your boundaries are a little bit tighter. I hope so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So she mentions there's 8 ground rules for avoiding boundary violations.
Oh, I love that too.
Yes. Yep. She says, don't imply by word or deed that another person is worthless. That is called shaming. Don't yell or scream at another person. don't ridicule another person, don't lie. But then I put in parentheses, but be kind when telling the truth.
Yep.
Because a lot of people confuse brutal honesty with something that's a good trait, and it's not.
That's not
Unless the person
narcissist.
asks for it.
Yeah, I'm a narcissist. I'm just telling you what is true.
Yeah, it's just this. Yeah. No, that's.
I think she calls it like be political or something about it. Like you do not tell, like if you're dating a guy, diplomatic. If you're dating a guy, do not tell him that you think his friend is very attractive, for example. Even if it's true for you, don't say that.
Right. Don't attempt to control or manipulate another person. Don't be sarcastic when being intimate. I would say really be careful with sarcasm in general. And then she says, don't interrupt.
Oh, I have to work on that one.
You know, I get that way too. I get it when I get excited about things. I interrupted Angie the other day in the live stream when I was thinking about it later, and I'm like, Dana, that was so rude.
How dare you?
Well, really, I mean, that wasn't nice at all. I was just really excited and that was my thing. I was really excited, didn't want to lose my train of thought, but it still wasn't okay that I did that.
I do it to you all the time.
I think we're getting better though, getting into the flow. So
I think the headache is helping me today. I think I should have headache every time. It's better. Yeah, I'm quieter.
It does take a little while to get in sync with doing a live stream.
This is our 4th one, right?
I think so.
Yeah, we got better. I think we're figuring it out now.
Yeah. So here's the last takeaway. And I love that she brought this up. I thought this was so powerful. This is the gift in the pain. And she spoke about when she began attending AA meetings, she found it odd that some alcoholics were calling themselves grateful recovering alcoholics. She wondered why they would be grateful for the suffering and pain their alcoholism had caused.
Amen.
Later on, she came to see that it was only because their alcoholism had made them so desperate that they had been forced to learn about a better way of living and loving. Had these grateful recovering alcoholics never struggled with alcoholism in the first place, they would have never found it necessary to learn that the status quo was an unhealthy place. The same goes for us. Who have experienced a tremendous amount of pain from a lack of self-esteem and self-value and our resulting poor boundaries or from the poor boundaries of others. This pain, while tremendously hurtful, is a huge wake-up call that we need to do something different. And even though change is difficult, there comes a time when it's more difficult to stay the same. And so then my last few sentences here was, as you move forward into this next chapter in your life, and whatever changes that might entail for you, please know that change is often 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. And true success is about progress, not perfection. You can do this. You matter. You are not alone.
Yes. I love that. I can sign under that one.
Yes.
That's great. I love it. No, it's been if someone didn't, I don't know guys if you guys reading those books, but this one is really worth reading. And it's not that long. It's only like 200 pages, I think. Like 230 maybe. So it's not long. It's easy to read.
I would say this is hands down my favorite book for 2018.
Yeah.
And I would say it's probably definitely top 5, top 10 most influential books I've ever read. Like I really liked the way that she spelled out like the functional adult, the wounded child, the adapted wounded child, and like all of the different forms of boundaries and healthy and 2 different forms of unhealthy.
Yeah. The adapted wounded child sounds better. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting again. Damn it. Sounds better than the inner critic, because I find out that my inner critic that's very like judgy, it really doesn't sound like an adult, you know?
Well, and I think too, another big takeaway from this book is we can realize when you're aware of like what unhealthy boundaries are, and of course we see our own self in this, right? But we
Yeah.
can also really see the problematic people in our life. And I think it just really goes to show this is why we can't change them. They're
Yes.
coming from a place of their wounded child and their adapted wounded child. We can't do that work for them. You're not, this is, we talk about this all the time. They're having an adult temper tantrum. You're dealing with the person with the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old. Like you literally are dealing with a child, and they are a million, unless they're willing to start doing that work, they're a million miles away from changing. And we mentioned this earlier, trying to set boundaries and point this stuff out to people that are wounded children that are running, that are not wanting to deal with any of this stuff. And they've been this way their whole life, and their whole personality is nothing but a giant defense system. They're going to go on the attack, and it's not going to end well. And
No.
so I think if anything, let that give you that reassurance that it's more about just trying to get through to them. They have to do all of this inner work in order for them to truly change. So the change at the flip of the light switch, that's false change. The promises of change, okay, that's just empty talk. Like you got to do the work of the work. There's
And
no other way around it.
it's not your job. Like you didn't break them, you cannot fix them. It's not your job. You do you find your truth,
And it's a sign, and honestly, it's a sign of poor boundaries to try to continue to change somebody. That's the whole codependent mindset of like, okay, well, I'm going to fix them. I'm going to change them. This person's profoundly broken, but how can I continue to make this work? Healthy people don't think that way.
Yeah,
they realize that. No. They're like, you know what, this person, and here's the thing, the person you're trying to fix is going to end up resenting you. And if they don't become violent, then they're going to end up resenting you. But if we're getting our self-worth from thinking like, oh, I'm going to be the person that fixes them, then after they get fixed, then it's this weird place where it's like, oh my goodness, they don't need me anymore. They're totally fine. Now what?
Yeah, it's too much, too complicated.
It is.
And I think it's more, it's like very dysfunctional, because then you are from the one up position to trying to fix them, like you turning it. Yeah. And so you're not creating an intimate relationship with them either.
And it's not right. And it's not sexy, because then like you're dating a parent, right?
Yeah, you're dating a child or a parent. Oh, it's like all dysfunctional. Just, how about this? Develop yourself as a functional adult, because let me take a step back. So if you're right now looking at it all and say, sure, my boundaries are wacky, I am mostly a wounded child and maybe an adopted child, and I thought I'm an adult, but heck no, I'm not. I'm like a little kid in a big body. If you find yourself that you are like this, then number one, it's okay. That's just your development. Stop somewhere, and now you can reparent yourself. Create this functional, wonderful adult the way it's authentic to you, right? Yeah. What's true to you. Maybe your functional adult will be a fun one, maybe will be serious one, I have no idea. But you create that one. And then you know what? If you want to date, find someone who has a nice, fun, functional adult in them and react to that,
Yeah, it's the whole finding a partner, not a project.
Yes, God, do not get up. You don't need project. You want to have a project, start painting classes.
Right. Yeah.
Writing books like Dana.
Yeah, something else that's healthy.
Yeah, for fun. Do a book club.
Well, again, just as a reminder, so book club book we're doing next week. I need to change it on my website, but it's a book called DBT Made Simple. It's by Sherry, and the last name is maybe Swedish. Your guess is as good as mine. Sherry Van Dijk.
Let me see it. How it says?
Dijk.
Oh my God. Hold on. You know what? You wrote it here. But what I'm looking for, I just want to say, if any guy, a man, not a woman, would like to join the book club, will be fun.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. Send
you can email
an email or something.
Yeah.
Great. You did not put the author of the book here. Oh, okay, whatever.
So yes, DBT Made Simple. Sherry Van Dijk is her name. That's the book we'll be reading for next month. So, and if you're interested in book club, I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna, how we would do this if we had multiple people that are interested. People interested, and they kind of drop off, and so I don't know. But you can email me, or actually maybe leave a comment down below.
Yep.
And then we'll go from there. Or I guess email me, dana@thriveafterabuse.com. And we'll
so
go.
Since we figured out that two dynamic, now it's gonna take us 6 months to figure out the 3 people dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it would be good to have one more person, I guess.
I agree. I think so too. I think it'd be great to have a few more, but I need to kind of, I don't know. I need to figure it out. But
yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Book Club is the last Thursday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we look forward to seeing you next month. So thank you so much for joining us. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you can heal from this. So
yay! I love to do that with you. Did you see that picture from the beach?
Yes, very nice.
Yes.
Okay, guys, take care.
Take care.